Welcome to the Customer Management IQ video interview series. I'm your host, Corey Bennett, and today we are on site at the 12th Annual Call Center Week in Las Vegas. Joining me right now is Linnea Johnson, the Director of Consumer Services at YuTuplr. Linnea's presentation today was titled Unilever Consumer Services, How Unilever Creates Strategic Value While Cutting Costs Through Exceptional Customer Interactions. She joins me right now to chat a bit about that. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me.
So to start off, I know at Unilever you realized you had a lot of disparate systems that weren't talking or communicating. What made you realize, though, that you had these disparate systems and something needed to be addressed?
You know, a lot of that had to do with looking at the effectiveness and the efficiency of your organization, and then really starting from the ground up and going out and talking to the people on the front line and saying, what is it that's causing your pain? You know, why is it that calls are taking so long to handle? Why is it that an email is taking so long to handle? And when you really get that information from the bottom up, it came very clearly that a lot of the processes that we had were redundant because the systems wouldn't talk to each other. A lot of time was being wasted keeping old systems up and maintained properly. And the reps themselves were saying, we just can't get that information fast enough, and consumers really expect us to know everything about the brands.
Yeah. So keeping cost efficiencies in mind, though, it's one thing to throw money at the problem, but how did you address the assets that you already had in-house, and how did you leverage those maybe with some unique thinking to keep costs to a minimum while actually addressing the problems?
So looking at some of your starting points, we had an IVR system, and that's interactive voice response. Sometimes we use our acronyms and never tell anybody what they mean.
Our audience is pretty in the know,
but
yeah.
So we looked at an IVR and we realized, well, at one point, if a couple of brands shared a number, you really couldn't make that self-service functional for each individual brand. So, the needs of a Dove bar soap is very different than the needs of Hellmann's mayonnaise. So you start at some of that. You look at the efficiencies of what you've got. The big things that we looked at is, again, as I said earlier, is what was causing our representatives so much pain, and a lot of that was the knowledge management system, which honestly was a very inexpensive system that we had had for over 10 years, but really didn't allow that interface and the interaction with the consumer and the information that they needed, or the representatives and the information that they needed to address the consumer needs. So that was really, they brought that as the big pain point. Let's address that first. So
one of the issues that a lot of people are wondering about is web self-service. It's an issue that a lot of people have, but it's not actually, it's a cost waster for them. How have you guys come to integrate web self-service and put money into it and actually get an ROI on it?
Well, I tell you, it's interesting. When you look at the web self-service, a lot of times Consumer Services owns that Contact Us page. So the FAQs and whatever else that marketing would put out a lot of times just happened to be a lot of information, not necessarily what consumers were asking, but just a lot of information about the brand. So our first small step was to say, okay, anytime a consumer touches that Contact Us page, let us try to give them the information that we know that they're asking for and put that up first. So we did that, which is minimal cost. So we really basically said to the brands, let us own the space behind that Contact Us page. We then made that a lot more consumer friendly, so the information that they wanted to have, they could see first. And once you saw that cut down on the number of emails that had to be handled, there's your ROI for saying, okay, we've already shown that little bit of progress without investing a lot of money. We can show a huge change if we can invest a little bit of money and put Web Assist on our pages. And that's really a technology that makes the consumers feel more like they're having a chat session with somebody, and their answers are really addressed to them when they just ask a natural question.
Were you finding that email was a big money waster for you? I know a lot of people seem to think it's like, honestly, if I could get rid of it, I wish I could. I would.
Actually, from my viewpoint, my least favorite contact method is a letter. Half the time you can't read people's handwriting, and you don't know what they're saying if they say, I hate your shampoo or something like that. Emails, we found, were a little difficult because a lot of times consumers just gave you half the story, so you had a lot of back and forth on emails. When they call you on the phone, you can get that face-to-face interaction. So again, you take what you know from, okay, why do we have to go back to consumers, and built that into what's called a web form. So our web form really asks a lot of pertinent information to keep us from having to do those back and forth. So I think, you know, you don't want to say that emails aren't good because consumers like that. That's their preferred, or some people's preferred form of communication, but you want to make sure that you make it as easy as possible for them to tell you what their problem is or to ask you their question so that you can address it back in that first contact resolution.
So we talked about several channels of engagement. Obviously, you mentioned some of the successes you've had, but what are some of the specific ways that you monitor the success and benchmark for success, with these different channels and hold yourself accountable to these benchmarks?
You know, a lot of it, I've always said to people, if you don't like to have measurements and you don't like people watching what you're doing, you don't want to be in a contact center. So we measure everything. So, you know, when you look at some of the efficiencies you may put on the IVRs or even the knowledge management system, you want to look at, okay, what happens to your average handle time? So did it improve or not? So clearly, if you put in a better knowledge management system and your average handle time goes down, you can see a clear ROI there. In the IVRs, it's the same thing. You know, we look at them every 6 months. We look and update and say, okay, what is our resolution rate in that IVR? Is it still at 30% or better? I mean, we set a minimum threshold.
And that's the threshold
30% or better. And every 6 months, we update it, we refresh it, because we know we have loyal consumers who may call us back, and they may have different questions and things change.
So how does that threshold compare to what you see in the industry today?
I think it's at or above industry standards. I think a lot of people I hear talk about 20 to 25%. We set it a little higher than that. You know, when we look at our self-service on the web with Web Assist, we looked at, okay, what's the success rate? So of the people that hit that platform, what percentage of time did they actually get their answer? And, you know, we were hoping for like an 80% success rate, which to me seemed, you know, unbelievably unattainable. And we're actually achieving about 96% on all of our websites, which is huge. So again, the ROI was really, really fast. When you look at the people time that would have taken to resolve all of those emails, and now basically the consumer feels like, you know, somebody was at the other side of that little chat session helping them out, and 96, 97% of the time they're getting the answer that they need.
That is incredibly
which is
high.
really, really exciting.
I wanted to touch on again average handle time you mentioned and how that was reduced. Some people debate the value of average handle time. What's your opinion? Because some people say, oh, well, we've reduced our call volume, so it's okay that our average handle time goes up. Where do you stand on that, and how have you seen that be implemented at YuTuplr? And
we kind of looked at it a little differently. It wasn't just an overall average handle time. So we know if we try to compare our handle time today to what we had, say, 5 years ago before we had a lot of this self-service, our actual average handle time now is higher than it was 5 years ago.
Interesting.
Because the easy stuff is being taken care of 24/7 in the self-service. So the more difficult items are being left to our representatives, more of the issues with the product. So we want to dig a little bit further. What was the lot code? What's the manufacturing code? You know, when did you first have a problem? So we get a lot more information. So what you really want to do is you want to make an apples to apples comparison. So look at the average handle time for, say, complaints, packaging complaints, and how was that before and after self-service? Or actually, in this case, you look at it before and after the knowledge management system went into place. So we knew that the average handle time still went down, although it was longer than it was 5 years ago. But that's fine. We're getting more critical information, feeding a lot of that back to the constituencies within Unilever, so in quality and supply chain and R&D, and it's helping us improve our overall quality.
I always love when people debate the value of these metrics. You know, it seems like it's a worthless topic, but you know, it's very critical to success in a contact center.
Well, it is, and a lot of times you should look at it not so much as a black and white average handle time. It's got to be 3 minutes. But if you have 100 reps or 60 reps, and your average handle time is 7 minutes, and you do great time, but your average handle time is 20 minutes, we have a problem. And if my average handle time is only 2 minutes, then I'm not spending enough time. So I think, you know, it's relative to look at it when you want to look at an ROI, but it's also important to look at it when you're judging the effectiveness of your frontline staff.
Great. Well, I don't know how this interview became an indictment of my average handle time,
I'm sorry.
but you do what you can. Linnea, I appreciate you joining me today and
Great.
sharing your insights.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. And to our viewers out there, you can check out more of our videos at customermanagementiq.com. Once again, I'm your host, Corey Bennett. Thanks for watching.